a podcast about something where each week we dive deep into whatever it is we find interesting. I'm your host, Calvin, and joining me from elsewhere, it's your co-host, Nick Richardson.
Greetings from elsewhere.
How's the divine nonchalance over there?
It's fucking tight, bro. Tight as shit.
Divine. Nonchalantly divine.
It's divine as shit.
So we are taking time today for all of you who have not been inducted into the Jejune Institute, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the crux of it is the AMC show Dispatches from Elsewhere, led by Jason Segel, was based on this real world, let's call it a game, I guess. And so we're going to kind of talk about what happened in the real world, what the point of that was, what happened in Dispatches from Elsewhere. There will be spoilers that we will try to say before we go into spoilers from Dispatches from Elsewhere in case you want to watch it, because it is a super interesting show and it's a well done show. And I encourage you that if you haven't seen it to go watch it, because it's a lot of fun to get lost in. And we're going to kind of compare the real world stuff to what happens in the show and kind of work our way through this game.
If you can call it that.
This experience.
This trip.
Way of life.
Yes.
But it's definitely interesting. So let's start out with, what is the Jejune Institute? That's Jejune, Jejune. It's the way it's explained in itself is its attempt to socio-re-engineer humanity through technological advancement. It's run by this guy, Octavio Coleman Esquire.
He's a pimp.
Weird guy, yeah.
Mega pimp.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, he's got David Koresh vibes. Like, hard.
Yeah, he's got a lot of vibes. I don't know what to say about him. But the best way to explain it is a mind-bending phenomenon where 10,000 people became inducted without ever quite realizing what they had signed up for.
That's a shitload of people.
That is a lot of people.
When you think about it, and we'll break it down for you exactly why 10,000 people is a lot of people when it comes down to this. But
I mean, 10,000 people is a lot of people.
Period.
Anywhere.
Yeah. It's more than a Trump rally.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, you'll have to cut that out probably.
That's topical.
We'll get fucking
I'm
firebombed.
I don't care. Bring it.
I really like the tagline that they mention repeatedly, and they're purveyors of nonchalance.
Yes.
I love that.
Exactly what they are. And they, on the other side of the coin, is the Elsewhere Public Works Agency. As you've heard, Nick is joining us from Elsewhere. And they are the pioneers of the nonchalance movement and the mortal enemies of the Jejune Institute, led by none other than Commander 14. Very mysterious guy. No one really knows a lot about him.
Great accent.
And, their purpose was to help unlock the divine nonchalance within humanity through creativity. So on one side, you got the Jejune Institute looking to advance through technology. And then the other side, you got the Elsewhere Public Works Agency trying to use creativity to kind of advance. And these were real entities at one point within this game.
Yeah, they're real entities in the sense that, like, I guess they exist. I mean, let's get the basis of fact there. But
well, okay,
let's
explain what the game was. The game, because I think if we try and do this without explaining that first, it's just going to be confusing. The game, it was an alternate reality game, and basically it ran for over 3 years. Like we said, over 10,000 players that got inducted into the game without really knowing it, and then kind of had to follow through different clues and paths and just all kinds of weird shit, which we'll talk about more later, to get through this game and get to the end. They were all kind of working towards a common goal to figure out what was going on. And that the main crux of it was, who is Ava? She was at the center of all this in the real world.
Yes.
She has a Dispatches from Elsewhere counterpart named Carla, who's more or less the same thing. Clara, not Carla.
Is it Carla? I wrote Carla down, actually. I thought it was Clara.
I think it is Clara. Better look
Huh.
it up now. We really
I
should know this.
I wrote Carla down too, which is dumb. But Claire is the first thing that came to mind. But I thought the concept of this was super cool. Like basically since I watched the show and the documentary and this entity, further research what I could find. I'm really interested in some alternate reality games. Those sound fucking sweet.
Well, and it seems like it's a big phenomenon. Like I had never really heard of alternate reality games. It is Clara, just to clear that up.
Dope.
Uh, but I had never really heard of these alternate reality games. I had done like little scavenger hunts and stuff like that, but not like this massive scale. 10,000 people participating over the course of 3 years, and it all ends in one place. And like the way they did this one was absolutely crazy, and they went all out. So when we say the Jejune Institute and the Elsewhere Public Works Society were real entities, they were only real within the scope of the game, and players kind of had to choose sides because they were, like I said, mortal enemies. And you decide whether you wanted to advance through technological advancement or through creativity, and that determined your path that you would take through the game and kind of who you would meet through the game and how you would interpret what happened to Ava.
How you'd interpret it while getting to the same point, which was
Right.
different. I mean, it was to have it on this scale along with, basically two separate paths for 10,000, let's just split it down the middle for 5,000 people each. And the way they did it with these are super intricate clues. They have like real office space, and they're obviously hiring tons of people to associate with this game. And
You think about how much
tag
money
shit.
this would cost.
Oh my god,
That's insane.
millions. And that's what makes it really fascinating as well, because it basically their induction takes place in the financial district, which in San Francisco. So it's
Right.
something where that's obviously to have something like this go down in a place like that was really neat.
Right. And so, like you said, it's in San Francisco. There was a documentary made in 2013. The game ran from 2008 to 2011, and the documentary came out in 2013. And that kind of explained how the game worked and why. Um, you can check out the documentary. It doesn't answer a whole bunch of questions.
Not
It's
really.
I was kind of going into it hoping to dive into the psyche of the game and what goes on in the gameplay, and it really felt like it was mostly ex-participants talking about how confused they were the whole time.
Just bewildered,
Yeah.
confused, or
And then every once in a while it would flash to the founder, and he'd just be like, "Well, we wanted them to feel confused." That's like,
that was the goal,
okay.
but some of them didn't get it, man.
Yeah. And we
It's
said there were
fucking so
10,000 participants, but not those 10,000 didn't participate necessarily the whole time. Like you could just stop at any point if you wanted to.
Yeah, imagine they track that by like each participant received like a letter, or I assume they all
They were getting
received a
phone
letter.
calls, they were getting emails, they were getting all kinds of
All
communications.
kinds of which is weird because they were basically geotagging them, I assume, in some way, shape, or form. Tagging
And
all these people's phones and shit back then. Oh
well,
my
I mean,
God.
yeah, 2008 there weren't really smartphones that weren't as pervasive as they are now. There's not a lot on the internet about this particular instance. I found maybe 4 or 5 articles, and all of them said pretty much the same thing. And I figured, especially after Dispatches from Elsewhere came out, I figured there'd be this boon in stuff out there, and we'd be able to research it a little deeper. And it was really hard to find a lot of this. So for me, most of what I'm going to talk about either comes from the documentary, or I found a good New York Times article called "Interested in the Jejune Institute, It's Too Late." And then another article on medium.com called "A Game Called the Jejune Institute," which was a blog by a person who participated, and she just kind of runs through each step of the way. We're not going to get that deep into it, but that's a better read, I would say, than watching the documentary.
Yeah, I had a really hard time finding anything. It felt fake as shit. When I started looking stuff up, it felt like they were
Like we got duped again. Even the documentary feels like it's not, like they're describing this thing that didn't actually happen. Like it's all performance art, right?
Right, and they're acting. Like they never said they it's like they were reading lines almost. It was fucking odd, and it felt like they were all like set up. Like you said, all the articles said the same fucking thing. and pretty much every link took you to one of those articles. It was like someone set it up deliberately to throw you off the trail.
And if you go to in those articles, there's a few websites referenced. If you go to any of those websites now after the game's over, they'll just go to like a promo page for the documentary where you can find where to watch it and things like that. So it does feel like almost this game maybe never actually happened.
Like Blair
In
Witch
some ways,
Project.
yeah. But we are gonna go under the assumption that this game actually happened. The Dispatches from Elsewhere was a riff on that, not a riff on it, but they kind of took it one step further and explored specifically what characters in the game might think and feel as they're progressing through the game, which was a really cool way to do it. But we're not quite there yet.
Not quite. I did want to say I'm also pretty much going to be talking from the show, the documentary,
Yep.
and I also found an article if you folks are interested on cardhouse.com /where/Jejune. Jejune. That's also a really good blog about someone else's experience through, I think, a separate aspect of the game.
It would be funny so I didn't read that article and you didn't read my article. It would be funny that if we shared the articles back and forth and they were the exact same article, just like posted in different places by quote unquote different people.
Few words
Then
changed.
I would really, then I would really think this whole thing's a setup just to get people like us completely duped.
Dummies.
Well, the whole time we're watching the documentary, I'm like, all right, I'm starting to doubt the realness of this. Like, it just didn't feel real. And you look up stuff online and you can't find much. It's weird that something this large has so little footprint.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like that shit happens like on a bigger scale, and people never know. I mean,
Yeah,
stuff
I
like
guess,
that is
especially 2008 to 2011. The people doing this, if they didn't bring a journal with them, they've either got to go home and write a blog right away, which, I mean, 2008, a lot of people probably had blogs, but maybe they weren't doing that because they didn't know what they were into yet. They didn't know if they could share this information. They just thought they got inducted into some secret society. They're not going to go share that right away.
right.
The lady in the one I read, she worked for 2K Games and was aware of alternate reality gaming at the time. So that's why she kind of knew right away that that's what she was in. But a lot of these people that went into it, like, they thought they were inducted into a secret society.
The person I read just found a flyer and was like, "Cool,
Right.
I think I'll
Which
check
is
this out."
I mean, that they found the person I read found the same, one of those flyers and responded to it the same way. But she kind of, because she had worked with these types of games before, she knew what she was into once she got into it, kind of thing.
I feel like that would take some of the fun out of it.
Yeah. If you know it's a game the whole time, it definitely would.
Let's go, Ava.
Who is Ava? Childhood, in short, it was fucked up. A lot of crazy
news.
things going on. Her mom was kind of insane, clearly part of the world of nonchalance. And her mom had vanished / died when Ava was a young girl. And Ava kind of became wild and troubled in her teenage years. One of the videotapes shared with the participants showed Ava undergoing mind experiments in the Jejune Institute. They were recording her dreams in a way that could make them reality. This is the Memories to Media platform that they advertised. And then one night, Ava vanished when her drunken friends scattered running from a cop car. And there was a homeless person who a lot of people thought harassed Ava and potentially kidnapped her. Also thought that this homeless person was in on the nonchalance movement. Nobody knows what was going on, but the whole game was this, not a red herring, but the trail was to follow Ava's disappearance. And then in Dispatches from Elsewhere, Clara's disappearance, who had kind of the same lifestyle. She joined up with a group of friends who did these kind of street art, street performance things and try to beautify their neighborhood through creativity. And then one day, maybe she was kidnapped, maybe not, but she disappeared in very much the same way.
Yeah, I mean, it was concurrent between a lot of people in that they looked at Ava as a really special person, or at least in this framework. Like, she was hyper creative, and the way she viewed the world was unique. It was special, and she preached, going to elsewhere I guess just, escape her reality in the here or the there. And the way they explain it's really interesting, or at least I liked it. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought of in the documentary they have this dude that's like blacked out, and it's
Yep.
not obviously not his voice, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's the one who actually explains, kind of breaks it down for you. But that just fucking took me out of it. It's weird.
Yeah, he's the hardcore, right? That they wouldn't show his face, and he was the one that got way too into it.
Yeah,
And
fucked up.
I think we should say that as far as we know, Ava's not real, and her disappearance was not real. It was all a thread within the game. Just something for them to chase. The players had to have a goal, but a lot of people didn't take it that way. True crime's a huge thing right now. They saw this as them solving a real crime, and a lot of people, when the game was over, couldn't accept that Ava wasn't real. Like, they thought Ava was still out there, and they needed to find her.
Yeah, she needed them. She was one of them. Like, that's
Right.
These are creative people who
And
maybe don't
Jejune
necessarily
took her and destroyed her.
Yeah, she's a martyr, and it's a weird fervor to save someone that you feel like you can connect with, or they thought was someone special, or at least they were told that she was someone special.
Exactly. And through this game, I think a lot of people found themselves becoming more and more like her if they weren't already like her. And they found some of themselves in her, and didn't want to lose themselves in the same way she was lost.
Right.
All right, so let's break down the game of nonchalance. That is the real life version of this, also known as the Institute or the Jejune Institute. And we're going to take that and kind of compare the aspects to Dispatches from Elsewhere, that didn't really have a name for their game within that. But we're just going to kind of run through some different things and compare and contrast what happened in each one, how they were the same, how they were different, how we would react if we're in those situations.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So first, what is it? So for the game of nonchalance, as we've already said, it's an alternate reality game. Over the course of 3 years, enrolled more than 10,000 players who responded to eccentric flyers plastered all over the city, started the game by receiving their induction at a fake headquarters of the Institute located in an office building. Again, the documentary was made in 2013 that goes deeper into detail on some of this. In Dispatches from Elsewhere, it is, again, an alternate reality game, but no one knows that going in, and we don't know that going in. And that was something that really interested me about this show. Is, again, had no background with the Jejune Institute or any of this stuff in San Francisco, and the commercials did such a good job of setting it up. It saw Jason Segel looking at some of those flyers. It showed Andre 3000 going into his conspiracy mind sometimes. It showed Sally Field talking with Andres 3000. It's like, there is something weird going on in this show, and I need to figure out what it is.
Yeah, you turned me on to this, and I remember we've kind of briefly talked about it because I've been watching it over the past couple of weeks, and you go into it blind, and they just sweep your fucking feet out from under you almost in very subtle ways. Like it had me on the edge of my seat, but completely relaxed. And
right, you feel like you're working through the game with the characters because we go in blind, but they also go in blind. It's not this thing where anyone knows what's going on.
Well, and they're people like Ava, like Clara, the people like these 10,000 players, which we didn't know at the time, but it makes you feel a sort of way, which I can never really put my finger on.
It's a sense of wonder almost, and exploration, but we weren't in the world to explore with them, right? Well, Fredwin could be onto something, or, maybe Simone's right. Maybe Peter's right. You don't know. So we have 4 main characters. Peter, who's played by Jason Segel, Simone, who's played by Eve Lindley, Fredwin, who's played by Andre 3000, Andre Benjamin, Janice, who's played by Sally Field, and they are set out to investigate clues about the Jejune Institute and the Elsewhere Society as they discover their own divine nonchalance. That would be my 1-sentence wrap up of it.
Yeah.
But they're all kind of lost in their own lives in a certain way, and we get to place ourselves in their shoes. Are we a Peter, a Simone, a Fredwin, or a Janice? How would we work through the game or learn just following these clues? Because again, no one knows that it's a game.
Right, and how do they interact? And they're placed on a team together. Like that's kind of how it, and they could
Right.
not be more different.
Yeah,
Like
so all of the participants, let's say it's 10,000 people, just for comparison's sake, they all show up at like this fountain one night and they all get broken up into groups of four based on a color. They choose blue or red and they end up in groups of four, and this is our four that we follow through. And basically their goal is to find Clara, who is the keeper of divine nonchalance. Janice believes the game is an elaborate prank. Simone is guessing that it's just a marketing stunt. You're going to get to the end of it and they're going to sell you something, right? Fredwin insists that the whole thing is some high level conspiracy, data mining operation, something like that. And Peter, he suggests this, but he also deep down, because he's so unfulfilled in his life, he wants that it's a real thing. There's a real Clara out there. All the Jejune Institute is real. The Elsewhere Society is real, and they need to figure it out.
He needs it to be real.
Yeah, he needs it to be real more than it actually is real. That's a good way to put it.
Poor Peter.
Yeah, Peter had a rough time with it.
Yeah, super rough time. But let me say, they were all beautifully played by the respective actors.
The casting was perfect.
Fantastic.
Which, just on the information that we've given so far, when you started episode 1, who were you siding with most?
Honestly, I was siding with Peter the most.
Okay, so is that what you thought the end game was for the show? That it's all real? Or is that who you would see yourself at? You would be that person if you were caught up in this game.
I kind of saw a lot of myself in all 4 of them, but...
Yeah, well, and that's by design, I think.
Yeah, but really with you just, the way they frame it, you just identify with Peter. I mean, he fucking cries. So it's just like...
he's the main character as well.
Exactly.
It's told from his point of view.
I felt a lot for him. Like, Peter's like a goddamn allegory for depression. Like, he's like damn near the physical embodiment of depression. He does the same thing every day. He eats the same meal. He takes the same route. He's rooted in routine. And I immediately saw that and was just like, damn, that's whack.
And then all of a sudden he takes a chance on something in response to one of these flyers, and his whole life's turned upside down. He meets Simone, who kind of breaks him out of his shell, and she's a transgender woman, and he helps her accept herself a little bit better.
Yeah.
Janice is a lonely old woman whose husband is on his deathbed, and she has no one to confide in anymore. Fredwin is this conspiracy nut, tech guru kind of guy, tech genius, thank you, but he's also a conspiracy nut at the same time. I think I saw myself siding with Peter the most. Like, if I was in it, that's who I would want to be. I would want to be the one that thinks it's real.
But I would also, knowing it's probably fake.
Deep down, knowing I'm probably really closer to Janice and being like, all right, this is all fake, but let's have fun with it.
Yeah, but on the surface, it's like, I'd really like this to be real. I'm interested.
I don't
want someone to be dead, but
yeah,
you know
right.
what I mean.
I don't think I would be full Simone, where she knows in her heart that it's a marketing stunt, but she's so full of life that she's just gonna enjoy the hell out of it and pretend that that's not in the back of her mind.
She's a closeted cynic.
Right. And so she overdoes it in the exuberance for the game. She wants to just go all in and do everything she can. And I think I'd be more Janice, where it's like, okay, this is a prank. I'm not fully into, like, I know in my head that this isn't real. So like, I'll help you guys, but I'm not gonna like help you guys,
I'll be a part of the team, but
right.
I'm not gonna go further than that.
But as far as what I thought the show was setting up, I thought in the beginning that Fredwin was right. And that was kind of the thread I wanted to follow the most, is like, all right, how are they using this as a conspiracy? Like, I want to watch them unravel this vast conspiracy. And they kind of do, but it's also a conspiracy that they were led to unravel specifically.
It's fabricated for them,
right.
For entertainment purposes,
and the
reality and the show.
The creator of the game in the show even kind of goes a step further and sees that they're going down that path and sees that they kind of need the game to be more than it is, and goes above and beyond. Most participants get one story, and she kind of creates a alternate reality game for them to unravel their own way, which was I thought was kind of cool addition.
I thought it was pretty pretty cool too. The creator was excited by them, like their
Exactly.
interest and
It
their
gave her more
exuberance for
creativity.
the
Like it
game.
took a certain level of creativity just to create the game and get people involved, and then watching them work together and solve the problems that she set up made her want to expand the game. She basically did like a Magic the Gathering expansion pack for them.
That's a good way to put it.
So let's talk about the creators. For the Game of Nonchalance, it was a Oakland-based artist named Jeff Hull, and he wanted to give something, he wanted people to take in the city more than they were. We'll get into that in a little bit, but that was kind of his thought. And then in Dispatches from Elsewhere, this is kind of a spoiler, but it's this woman named Lee, who is also a personification of the Clara character. She kind of reveals at the end that she was Clara, and Clara was her creative side, and she feels like she sold out and betrayed that in pursuit of business success with, whatever else she did beyond that.
Yeah. Respect, money, power.
Right. So this was a way to kind of get back to her roots.
She missed the kid in herself.
Exactly. When and where did the game take place? With the game of Divine Nonchalance in real life, we said San Francisco, 2008 to 2011. Dispatches from Elsewhere took place in Philadelphia. I want to say like 2019. It was probably when it was filmed, and we'll just say it was contemporary. They all had their smartphones. They weren't trying to hide anything like that. They weren't trying to make it seem like it was older than it is. We'll say 2019.
Some aspects felt very like retro.
Yeah, and that was by design, because I read somewhere, I believe it was in that blog post, that's how the actual Jejune Institute was set up. It was very retro 70s feeling whenever they were in these buildings that were set up to be part of the Institute. That they were using outdated technology to do new technological advancements.
Huh. Okay.
So, why did they create the game? So for the Institute, in the documentary, Jeff Hall, he points out that he would visit this children's playground that it was either based on, or he just said it felt like it was like Alice's trip into Wonderland. And it was this small space, but you could go through these kind of tunnels, and it would open up to these different spaces within the park. And so it made it feel huge, because you could kind of go into these places within the smaller space, and there was just so much to take in and notice. And he wanted to make that exist on a larger scale. He figured there's so much in the world that goes unnoticed. He wanted to see if he could make people notice the world for what it was.
Stop and take it in.
Right. And just explore things that you never explore. Like you walk past a building every single day on your way to work. In San Francisco, where I live, you don't walk to work, but I imagine there's some people in San Francisco that walk to work, or they take that little trolley thing, or whatever, and you walk past the same building every day and you don't even notice it. So he was trying to make you notice those things.
Yeah, I thought that was
that's an interesting concept.
It's a noble thing to do, I suppose.
And it seemed like it was, obviously the game was sprawling and immense and huge, but for the participant, it seemed like it was easy enough things to accomplish to notice some of these things and to open yourself up to them.
Especially for like a more creative person who's willing to take a dive off the deep end and kind of open their mind to some strange shit. This was like perfect for them.
Exactly. So for Dispatches from Elsewhere, again, some spoilers here. If you're either in the middle of the show, haven't watched the show, just be aware. I don't think even the spoilers here, they don't really kill the ride of the show. Maybe a little bit if you know it's a game the whole time, but I don't know. I think you could still enjoy it for what it is, because it's really well done, it's well acted, and you do get engrossed in the characters and their journey.
Regardless, it's super interesting.
And the journey, it's a character-driven journey. It's not necessarily, okay, we have to find out what happens to Clara. It is that, but the characters have so much growth within this short period of time that it feels like that's why you're watching. That's why you're staying tuned. You want to see how these characters get to their conclusions, not necessarily just that they figure out what happens to Clara.
Right.
So brief spoilers here, maybe. The game was designed in dispatches from elsewhere to help Lee connect with the creative side of herself. She wanted to strengthen the idea of community being able to help solve your problems, and she wanted people to indulge in noticing the world around them and sharing that with their community, much like the real world example. And this is something that I picked up on. I don't necessarily know if it was a point made by the creators or if it was a point made by Jason Segel, who wrote most of the I don't know, it's not a screenplay, I guess, but he
Adaptation?
he wrote the adaptation for this. To me, it was a social experiment to prove that the smallest decision, choosing a color, can lead you into a community that becomes just this echo chamber, and basically you can create an enemy out of almost thin air, and with the right factors, you can be manipulated into believing anything and continue to believe that no matter what. Their first task was to choose blue or red. Half of them chose red, half of them chose blue, and the ones that chose red, they were led down the path to believe that Jejune was this great institute with only one goal, to help people through technology. The other half chose blue, and they were led on a path that made them believe that Jejune was evil, and maybe they even killed someone. And then
they had to go to war.
Right. And so spoilers for the end of it, the two sides legitimately hated each other, and the whole thing was made up out of thin air. But they hated each other. They were ready to go to war. There were protests and counter protests. One team had to steal something. The other team had to try and get it back. They almost had to kidnap the guy. Like, they went so far to disassociate from each other just based on the simple decision of choosing a color. And I think that probably says a lot about our world right now. But through this process, they also learned that by working together, they could solve their problems. And in the end, they realized that if the two teams had worked together instead of being at each other's throats, they probably could have saved Clara. They would have made it much further if they brought their information together and used it to figure out what happened to Clara. They would have realized that Clara became the architect of this thing.
Right.
But because they only each had half the information, instead of trying to work together, they hated each other, and neither of them could solve the ultimate riddle.
Well, it's something they touch on in the documentary as well, and it's just like when it was concluded, a lot of them sat there and were like, did we lose?
Yeah.
Or did we not get the answer right? And I think they portrayed that really well in Dispatches, because it kind of seems similar to that. Like, they spent so much time out at each other's throats, they completely missed the answer to the question.
Right.
Even though they all came to the same conclusion.
They were so focused on the
odd.
game that they missed the meaning behind it, and it kind of shows. It ends in this party for all the participants, and you see most of them are well adjusted, and now they've realized it's a game, and they're just like chatting and kind of reliving it to each other, how they went through the game. And our four main characters, they just can't move on. They know it's still there. They don't want to lose what made them special for these few weeks. They feel like if they move past this, they're all just going to go back to their lives. They're going to not really interact with each other anymore, and they don't know how to face that.
Well, and Peter especially, because
yes,
he lost his job. Like, he threw himself completely, into this situation, and it's.
I feel like if you're still
sad.
Listening at this point, you've been pretty much spoiled. So
yeah, or you've watched the show and you want to listen to people talk about it like I did.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking about it.
Exactly, and I mean, it was tough to see Peter, especially and they all had similar reactions to their initial standpoint in the game. Like, Peter was like, I hope this is real, and could not let go.
No, he made it. He made it real because it wasn't real. He made it real. Exactly. Simone was the one, I think, that moved on. Well, that's not true, and we'll talk about. Let's talk about where they ended up later, because I have that later. And I don't want to step on our own toes. But there is nothing on the internet really about this, so we might be the Jejune Institute experts at this point once this is all said and done.
We're gonna bring it back, bro.
Yeah, nobody else is talking about it on the internet, so
Jejune
shit.
squared.
So how were participants recruited for the game? This is kind of the same in both cases in the show and in real life. The organizer placed these random flyers around town with intriguing skills to learn or studies to join, just like this weird shit that you wouldn't think is real. They had one for learning to communicate with dolphins. They had one for turning memories into media. They had one for a time camera, which is said to produce trans time images. So if like you take a picture of the street, right, it'll the printout that you get is that street throughout decades of what it looked like in the 40s, the 50s. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, stuff that's obviously not real, but at the same time, it's like,
Well, what if it is real?
Exactly.
I would like to speak to dolphins.
That is in the realm of possibility.
Let me just call.
They've done weirder shit.
Yeah. Well, here's best case scenario. I learned how to talk to dolphins. Worst case scenario, I waste an hour of my life realizing this was a stupid thing.
And I have that settled once and for all. I can't talk to fucking dolphins. There's no way.
Mid case scenario, you end up inducted into a fake game that sends you on a months-long rabbit hunt.
Straddles the line of cult, maybe.
Yes.
But one thing that really kind of tripped up a lot of these people when they were getting inducted is like they would take their same route or, you know, something they were familiar with relatively, but they were closed off to, and then they'd go back later or something like that, and it's just filled with these flyers. So it's something that really throws off so it's jarring. Their initiation is jarring from the get-go. It's, you know, a stick in the spokes.
In the show, it almost feels targeted at Peter because he comes across a flyer that says, "Have you seen this man?" And the man is the man hanging the flyers literally in front of Peter. And he's hanging the dolphin communicating one and the memories to media one. And then he hangs one that says, "Have you seen this man?" And Peter's like been following him for the last 10 feet or whatever. And so that's kind of what intrigued Peter, is because to him it felt targeted. And I'm sure to a lot of these people, it felt that way. It felt like, okay, I've never seen these before. I see them now. They must be for me.
Right. You haven't gotten acquainted with the larger network yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they portrayed it in the show was just, that felt super eerie to me. Like I almost thought they were going to go like okay,
aliens.
This may be even more real now.
Well, and that was part of the setup from the marketing campaign for the show is that scene of Peter seeing all the flyers and kind of chasing that guy away was one of the ads that played for the show and got me really intrigued of like, okay, what really is going on? Why is this guy hanging a flyer of himself and then running off?
Yeah. What kind of what is going on in Philly?
Yeah. A lot of weird stuff goes on in Philly, let me tell you. But then after they would respond to the flyer, they're invited to an induction ceremony where they are introduced to the Jejune Institute and tasked with helping find Ava/Clara. And while there, they also get a notice to not follow the Institute, but to join the Elsewhere Society or the Elsewhere Public Works Association, whatever it is. And that the Jejune Institute is evil and Commander 14 is the only one that can save them now, blah, blah, blah. So they get both messages at the same time, and that's kind of when they're set up to choose a side.
Pick a color.
Which side do you think you would have chosen? So let's take it, you're Peter, you go into the induction, you watch the video by Octavio, I can't say his name right, Octavio Spencer Esquire, or Octavio Coleman Esquire. You watch that video, you find out what happens, and then you get a call immediately from Commander 14 telling you to get out of there. They're evil. Who do you believe?
Fucking Commander 14, for sure. That's how every action movie starts.
Well, especially in the show, because he's getting like direct text messages to his cell phone with instructions of what to do. So he really feels like he's being watched and like that there's a higher power at work here.
There's legit someone dragging him along.
I think if I were in the show, I'm going with Commander 14. But in real life, it was a little more subtle, the tension between the two sides. And I think I would kind of try and play the fence as much as possible until I learned out a little bit more information.
Yeah, but the way
I
they
think I would end up on the Elsewhere Public Works though, either way.
they didn't. I would have been rushed right there. I would have been like, fine, okay, sure. And just gotten the fuck out of there.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so let's talk about what happened during the game, both in the show and in real life. So in real life, again, we both have blog links. We'll include them in the show notes that you can kind of follow through somebody's actual day in the life of going through the game. Uh, but they could kind of work at their own pace, following these clues throughout the 3 years. The clues were set up in San Francisco. You could start one weekend and then just do nothing for several weeks in a row. And as long as you ended it before the end was coming in 2011, you were fine. But the clues would be given through maps, notes, audio and video, street art, and so much more stuff just around San Francisco. And each one led further and further down the rabbit hole. And I think like once you get to a certain point, there's no turning back on it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's intricate. It's
Yes.
very well thought out, and it's
when you
almost
put a
like
lot of work into it to get to certain points.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, to figure things out, it's got that gratification factor where it's like, okay, this was hard, and I figured it out. That's pretty fucking like they had radio stations and get to this point to hear this special message, and then it actually works.
And the whole time, again, you don't necessarily know that it's a game. You think it's real. You're being recruited to help the secret society figure something out.
Well, I've never heard of a game like that. Most people are just in a world of resources when everything comes down to dollars and cents. It's just like, yeah, this doesn't.
Yeah, why would somebody spend millions of dollars to set up this game?
Right.
Like they need my help. Like at some point you'd say they need my help more than I can go about my own life at this point, and I need to dedicate myself to helping them. And everything I've done so far works. So maybe I do have the divine nonchalance, right? Maybe I do have this something special because everybody wants to be special, and that was Peter's whole thing. Is he got recruited? He allowed himself to be recruited because they promised him he would be special.
They told him he was special.
Right.
I mean, they're just like, you are special, guy. And he's like, cool, all right.
So
tell me how I'm special.
The final step in the game was to meet up with 7 other random players and complete several final tasks through working together with these strangers. They were kind of like trust exercises, and like you'd have to say certain phrases, but you had to say your part, and then somebody else would say their part, and then you would have to say another, and then the third person would say something. So you all 7 had to kind of, or all 8, sorry, had to work together to solve this final clue. And none of you knew each other before you got to this place. And a lot of them said, I saw it in the documentary, I saw it in this blog post that I read, like there was a funeral going on when they showed up, and still no one knows if that was part of the game or if that was real.
Yeah, that is fucking weird.
And they were like all trying to be respectful because there's a funeral, because it's at a mausoleum, and they're trying to be respectful of this funeral going on. They don't want to step on anyone's toes, but they also like are at the end of the game. They want to finish it.
Well, they're in a super unique place. This mausoleum is made of books.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's ashes are in books or are books. Very, very interesting. And the way they describe it, it's a symbol of the game. It has these weird twists and turns, and then these small places turn to big places, and so on and so forth.
I feel like you would have to have a yearly meetup. Like after you finish, you get those 8 people in a group chat, and you're having a yearly meetup at that place. Regardless of if you discuss.
Beer or something.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's go.
That's what I mean. Like, you don't have to be best friends with them, but like you got to meet back with these people every so often now.
Fuck yeah.
So the game ended with a quote unquote socio re-engineering seminar put on by the Jejune Institute, and it was actually led by this performance artist, and it included surveys and questionnaires and exercises and trust exercises and dancing and kind of all these silly games and activities that you'd associate with like a corporate retreat team building type bullshit.
Yeah, oh god.
So they go through a whole day of this at a Hyatt or a Hilton or something in a hotel in San Francisco. And then at the end of this, they kind of just drop the bag and they're like, okay, none of this was real. And they took the time, they did take the time to explain the game and answer questions. The blog posts I read said a lot of the hardcores just kept grilling them on like, where's Ava? What's going on? Like, we need real answers. You guys are obviously lying, not they didn't want to accept that they've been lied to for the past 3 years. They wanted them to just be lying now in this moment, and like there's still more to go. They didn't want the
Right.
game to be over.
They still hadn't, they still looked at it adversarially. So it's like, oh, you're on the opposite side. You're lying to me.
Right. And even as part of that last retreat, like if you were on the side of Elsewhere, you were supposed to go in and steal something from this little room, and if you were on the Jejune side, you were supposed to stop everybody from kidnapping Octavio Coleman. And so, like you said, when the game ended, everybody's just like, wait, we didn't do anything that was right. And the little balls that they were supposed to steal were like balls of tea, and they just put them in their drinks and started drinking them. Like, that's how fucking people die.
Well, I mean, in the way this performance artist did it too was really odd, because he's basically telling the crowd after he's got them all inducted, put the ball of random herbs in the glass of
just
water.
Put the ball that you stole out of the office that no one's supposed to know you stole, but I know you stole. Put that in your glass of water. You'll be fine. Trust me. It's like,
let me drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, this could have easily turned into several thousand people dying in a Hyatt.
Yeah, no shit.
In San Francisco.
Like, well, fuck, dude. And if they hadn't I think if they took it any further, people would have gotten hurt. Like, seriously hurt.
Well, there was some intimidation by the hardcores and, people who didn't want to believe that it was anything other than the face value that they were given. People who treated it as a game sometimes got intimidated or bullied, and same even with like the two opposing sides. Like, there was real animosity between them, and there was harassment between them on occasion. So it could have definitely escalated, and I think that probably serves to some point of why they're like, okay, it's been long enough, we need to stop this.
Yeah, they say we ran out of money. We're gonna run out of money.
I can imagine that happened too.
Yeah, no shit. But at the same time, it's just like, I feel like animosities are starting to grow. People are gonna start shooting, and we don't want that.
Luckily, it was San Francisco. If this was Texas, people would have been dying left and right.
Oh fuck yeah, dude! Oh my god, if this was genuinely Philly, yeah, it'd be over.
So in Dispatches from Elsewhere, it kind of follows the same route. It did seem a little quicker. It didn't seem like it was 3 years. It maybe a couple weeks, couple months at most.
It seemed like about a year.
Yeah, maybe a year. That's probably good. And the clues seemed to be prompted to the participants a little bit better. Like, it wasn't you had to figure this thing out. It was you sat and waited, and then your cell phone rang, and it was like, go to this place, and that was it. And then you figured it out from there. To me, it seemed like in the real life thing, it was like a Ron Swanson scavenger hunt where each clue led to the next clue, and you had to keep figuring things out. And if you didn't figure them out, then you're just done with the game.
Right.
Like, they're not chasing after you to make sure you're staying in the game and staying interested.
Well, they're not giving you things that only you would notice. It was very blanket.
Right.
Like you said, it felt very individualized, especially with like Peter.
Mm-hmm. The players had to follow the clues throughout Philly, and they had to discover the mystery behind Claire's disappearance, just like in the real life. This game forced each participant to choose sides, Jejune versus Elsewhere. Even within their group of four, that group of four had to choose, all right, who are we going with? Who are we going to believe? And I thought this was cool how they set it up is Fredwin and Janice were sent on their first mission to kind of see how great Jejune was, right? And Peter and Sydney were sent on the other side to see how great Elsewhere is, and to see what a piece of shit Octavio Coleman was, and how terrible of an organization Jejune is. And so when they came back together, they already had dissenting views, and they had to figure out, all four of them, they had to make a choice of what they were going to do.
Right, and at the same time, they're like, well, we're a team, so we got to stick in this together. Let's take a consensus. The group has to have a consensus.
I think this was a very unique group that we chose to follow, in that they were able to come to that consensus. I think a lot of groups, and I think that's part of what the show is trying to say, is a lot of groups would stop right there, and those two would go that way, and those two would go that way, and they're not a team of four anymore. Now they're two teams of two.
Exactly.
And that was part of Jason Segel's message, is that your community can help you solve problems, not if you break at every little disagreement, you're just going to go further and further away from your goals. So you need to rely on the community that you have.
Right. you don't have to go it alone.
Right. And I think we'll get more into Jason Segel's mind space at the end, because that's something almost completely separate from this, but within this.
Right. Within this framework.
Right. And then, so spoilers, each side, the Jejune side and the Elsewhere side, they work separately toward Claire's discovery, only to end up in the same place, as you pointed out earlier. Half were there to protest and to stop whatever Jejune was doing. The other half was there to help Jejune accomplish their goal. And after there was like a final in Dispatches from Elsewhere, there was a show. It was supposed to be like this stage show that was put on, which Peter ruined completely because he didn't want to give up on the game. Everybody else figured it out and like are trying to stop Peter. And he's like, no, I gotta find Clara. I got it. Don't worry.
This is real.
Very forgetting Sarah Marshall character, Jason Segel going up there.
Yeah, and he's I mean, I half expected someone to be like, show me your dick.
No, that happened in the final episode.
Right.
And so after the final show, everyone's invited to a party to talk about what they experienced through the game, how they learned it, and just kind of be together. And like they all survived this thing together, and now they want to revel in it, you know, which I thought was kind of a cool thing.
I agree. I thought
it's better than an all-day seminar where at the end it's like, oh, game's over, go home.
Yeah, bye.
Drink this tea first, though.
Yeah, exactly. From this fucking weird guru, hang out under this hot ass parachute, touch each other. But I thought it was great that they kind of developed lasting connections. Like it's almost what the game should have been, in regards to like connecting people with their community. But I don't think I think the running out of money thing kind of stopped them from actually achieving that.
I think that was almost an unintended consequence of the real life game. Because in this thing that I read, the woman says that, you know, she made some friends and she knows some of these people better than she knew lifelong friends that she met at the retreat or, you know, at that final task. And she does keep in contact with some of them. So it strengthened the community in a way, but I think that was more of an unintended consequence. I think the main crux of it was to discover the city in a way you haven't seen it before.
Look at the
at
beauty
least in real
all
life.
around you.
Yeah. In Dispatches from Elsewhere, in the game Clara created, or Lee created, that was definitely a consequence, was to involve yourself within community to help solve your problems. And that's very heavy in the final episode that focuses on Jason Segel.
Yeah, big time.
So let's talk about some of the tasks that the players had to accomplish. You got to dance with Sasquatch.
That was super cool. When I first saw that, I was just like, what the fuck is going on?
Because it was like Teen Wolf Sasquatch, right? It wasn't...
It looked like a dude in a suit.
Yeah, it was very weird. And you were still... It was the second episode. You're still unsure... Or it was the first episode, I think.
Yeah, it was the first episode.
You're still unsure if this was a game or if this was a real thing or if aliens were involved or what's going on. It's some high-level conspiracy you don't know. And now here's Sasquatch just fucking jamming with a boombox.
Yeah, and, you know, there's a payphone and he's getting weird commands and shit. It was really uncomfortable.
And those are both things that happen in the real life system as well. You know, you got to follow clues through these systems of tunnels and like houses that you don't know are there. One thing was to join a protest against the Institute or stop the protest, like counter protest at one point, depending on which side you picked. You could, this was my favorite part, I think, was when Peter and Sydney were chasing down the Elsewhere lead the first time. They go into Clara's old home place, like her little home village within Philly, and
Fishtown.
Fishtown, thank you. They found all this cool street art that kind of told this story if you looked at it from the right angles and put things together perfectly. Like, I thought that was really cool, and that was also part of, not quite that elaborate, but that was part of the San Francisco game as well.
Yeah, I thought that was really fucking neat too. It brought more realism to it.
Mm-hmm. The thing that was hardest for me to watch was in Dispatches from Elsewhere was the Memories to Media exhibition that they did with Janice.
Dude, that was heartbreaking.
It was very hard to watch, and that was the first time that we got to see behind the curtain. We met Lee in that episode. We didn't know she was the architect at that point. She was just like the Fredwin. yeah, Fredwin suspected she was the director of this farcical show that Jejune was putting on for the benefit of the participants to get them to believe in what Jejune is doing. And I mean, she was, but she also wasn't. And we just get that peek behind the curtain and how they were manipulating her memories and her social media pages to show her these things that happened in her life that she thought were memories and to show the world. And they like made her express her feelings in front of this huge crowd, and it was very heartbreaking to watch. Sally Field did an amazing job though.
She was fucking amazing this whole series, but and the way they portrayed it is her younger self is much more brash and stuff like that. So she's revealing aspects of herself that
Mm-hmm.
she is hidden behind, layers, this facade almost, because it's very heavily hinted at.
She's almost sunken into her husband's life rather than because she wanted
100%.
She wanted to be this great achiever when she was younger, and then all of a sudden she's sunken into her husband's life. And not in a bad way, in a way that she's happy and she has children and she feels somewhat fulfilled, but she's also let go of that part of herself. And she's almost, after that experience, she's haunted by the ghost of her past self, trying to get her back to that.
Yeah, she has a want to, she's almost like a bad girl. Like
A little bit.
It kind of implied that she hooked up with other chicks and she did some questionable things.
Yeah.
But and having her just belt this out in front of a bunch of strangers and the way they manipulated it to make sure it was her and she manipulated them too. I don't know. It's so fucking confusing at times.
So let's talk about the participants, because every character in Dispatches from Elsewhere perfectly played. The actors all do an amazing job. And it's the main focus of Dispatches from Elsewhere is who are the participants and how do they react. You've got Fredwin, who's the guy that takes it too far, and he took it so seriously, thinking it's this data mining conspiracy, and he can't let it go. He dips into some coma, like thought coma almost.
His what does he call it?
His blank space or something like that. It's almost like the sunken place. Yeah, it's almost like the sunken place in Get Out, where he can just escape to and basically remember everything because of he blocks everything else out and he gets almost stuck there.
It's like Batman detective mode from the Arkham games.
Right, that's a good way to put it.
See clues everywhere and shit.
And then in real life, you pointed out in the documentary, there's this guy that's all shaded, and he was the main hardcore who just would never let the game stop. And he was harassing other people on the other side, harassing people who didn't want to take it too seriously, and a lot of people had issues with him.
Yeah, a lot of people did not speak highly of him, and I want to know if he was in a wheelchair before or after. Like, did he?
Yeah, it seemed like it almost contributed. Like, he took it so far that he injured himself in some way and got stuck.
Like, really badly. And I mean, was he in a wheelchair?
Well, I think this is what you were kind of hinting at, is when he comes on, that's when your suspension of disbelief is kind of gone. Is like, this almost seems like one step too far. Like, just have the hardcore guy there, not like he went so far that he got injured and is paralyzed for the rest of his life. Like, it's almost like they took it too far to see if we would catch it. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't really happen. It might have happened. That's how the documentary kind of presents it to us.
Yeah, and at the same time, they were totally open with every other person that participated, and like, the guy that created it and shit like that. But this guy's blacked out, voice changed. It was almost like another little red herring. It was frustrating.
The documentary is very strange, and like if I found out in 10 years that none of this was real, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I get that.
That makes sense.
There were participants that thought everything was real. A lot of the real life participants thought it was real up to the point that it wasn't. Like, when that curtain came down at the Hyatt, they're like, oh shit.
All right.
And that would be a weird feeling to just go back through the last several months, years of your life and be like, so all this shit I did was literally for nothing, and why did I focus so hard on it?
Well, I think it would be worth it. I mean, that's just me personally, but a lot of these people genuinely felt a sense of wonder, evidenced by the fact they made it to the end to see the curtain fall.
I agree with that, and I think looking back on it a week down the road after you find out what's going on, you would see it like that. You would see, well, it really did open my eyes to a lot of things, but I think right at that moment you're just like, well, fuck, that was a waste of time, right? And
Yeah, probably.
I think the people who had some skepticism the whole time, and when the curtain finally fell, I think they would still have that feeling right away of like, I knew it was fake, but it was fun to go through. It was this experience that I have now for the rest of my life. It would just
Feels
it would
better to
be
be
a
vindicated.
huge gut punch. And we see that
Oh,
with Peter. Peter's the quintessential example of this. Of he gets punched in the gut with it's not real, and instead of accepting that, he goes up on stage, tears the whole thing down, and tries to tell everyone they're being lied to or something.
well, he crashes and burns.
Yeah, because that's the
It-
only play he has left. He doesn't have a job. He has nothing. He has to make it real.
I mean that's Peter now.
Mm-hmm.
He's completely, he was this blank canvas, just white blank canvas hanging out in the store, and then someone finally picked him up and took him home, did a little doodle, but didn't quite finish it, and he wants to
Mm-hmm.
be finished. God damn it!
A lot of the participants in real life, they became afraid for themselves and for Ava, before they found out she wasn't real. And it didn't only come at the hands of the game and the essence of the game, but some of the hardcore participants put real pressure on some other people and, and into finding Ava, and that wouldn't be a fun part of it, like coming across one of these guys and
No,
having to deal with their nonsense.
I would fist fight them. I'd be like, dude, back the fuck up. Like, come on now.
It'd basically be like coming across a Reddit Star Wars fan in real life and trying to discuss the merits of the sequel trilogy with them.
A never masker.
Oh, that's worse.
Yeah,
If you're not wearing a
that's
mask, fuck you. Just wear a
that's a good
mask. It's not
analogy.
that hard. Uh, so when my wife and I were watching the Institute documentary, she didn't really watch Dispatches from Elsewhere with me. I was watching it most of the time, and she would kind of like tune in and out of it and ask questions as she'd come in and out. But then she watched the documentary with me because she felt more interested in that. Her main takeaway was it looks like it's a bunch of nerdy white people with nothing better to do.
I think your wife sounds cool.
I mean, that's what it is. That's what this
That's
game was, I think.
that's fucking hilarious. Like,
She
yeah,
is very cool. Thank you.
in San Francisco, with they all think they're artists.
Yeah, in the I don't remember seeing any black people in the documentary. There might have been one out of like
There
the
was not
20 people.
there was the one black dude was
Yeah.
in on the whole thing. The one black guy.
It's definitely something that nerdy white people do on a Saturday afternoon. They've got no kids. They've got no pets. They're nothing. They're just sitting there with nothing to do. And they're like, hey, let's go find Ava.
Yeah, no shit. That's something white folks would do for sure. Like, oh, let's go on this quest.
All right, so let's talk about the goal of the game. In real life, they wanted to discover what happened to Ava, how the Jejune Institute and the Elsewhere Public Works Agency were involved with whatever happened to her. Institute participants had to protect Octavio Coleman and the orb, and the Elsewhere Public Works Agency had to kidnap Octavio or steal the orb, which was just a ball of tea apparently. The real goal was to encourage innovation and community involvement while exploring unexplored parts of the city, taking yourself out of your phone and realizing what's going on around you.
Right, but doing it in a way that feels completely unique to you.
Right.
Where it's something that it's just like so unique.
And with purpose. You're not
Exactly,
you're not just stopping to look at the building that you pass every day. Like there's a message on that building. You need to find it.
Right, and it sends you on another errand, but I love the way they opened it where it's like you need to sneak past security out of this building, take this route.
Mm-hmm.
They have to find clues to escape, but in the back of their minds, I don't genuinely think they probably thought that they were in any danger. That was really cool.
The woman whose blog I read, I'm trying to find the quote. She said this was the best part of her first day. She called it Jejuning. But they go to the office where you're supposed to be inducted, and they got up there, and there's nobody there. Like nobody's answering the door. Let me see if I can find it. All right, so the woman who wrote this article, she says, during the quest, we found a detective's office and he was searching for a woman named Ava who had vanished. She said, this is one of the best moments of the day, actually, because the floor where the office was happened to be, that's what she wrote, not me, I happened to be closed the Saturday we were trying to go, and so while we were looking for a way to go up the elevator, a gal in the shop near us yelled, "There's no detective up there. It doesn't exist. I don't know why you people keep looking for that office." So, like, this woman in the shop next door is just completely sick of this shit already.
Day one, baby.
Obviously, they didn't pay her off well enough yet.
Or did they?
Ooh.
You know, saying that 100 times, you'd be like, oh, fuck it. Here's a letter.
Yeah.
You know, leave it when you're done. I gotta give it to the other fuckers.
So the goal in dispatches from elsewhere was to, again, discover what happened to Clara and how Jejune and Elsewhere Society are involved in that. It was also set up to encourage creativity and a sense of wonder and to work with others to accomplish a common goal. More community involvement here than in the real life one, which was about discovering the undiscoverable.
Yeah.
Or the indiscoverable, I guess it would be. How do you think the creators feel about the game after it was complete? And maybe it was mentioned in the documentary, but I don't really remember it, if they felt it was successful or not.
I don't think that. I think they felt it was unfinished. I think they thought it was successful in the sense they set out what they set out to do, which was.
I think they opened people up. Like they
definitely opened people up, and I mean, Ava was real to this, the creator of the original game, and I think he honored her memory and the way he saw fit. But they, the guru dude and the guy who created it both said the same thing. Like, we ran out of money and we need to bring it to a conclusion this year. Like, it needs to end, but I don't think they genuinely wanted to.
And it seems
I'm sure
like
they enjoy this shit.
Yeah, I feel like you could, if this was as successful as you wanted it to be, I feel like you could raise money again off the back of it and start a new instance of it. And I didn't see anything of that happening. And now after this adaptation's been made, and it was a good show. It has good reviews, good ratings. Overall on IMDb, it's a 6.6. Really, figured it would be higher than that because it's enjoyable. I think it loses people in the last episode, which is very intrinsic and only about Jason Segel's life. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the game that they're playing, and that journey it breaks off and goes very personal for Jason Segel, and I think that turned a lot of people off to it, of like saying this is a great show.
I had to watch it. So the first time I was just like, the fuck is this, man? And the second time it resonated.
Yeah, I mean, I picked it up probably about a quarter of the way through. Then I'm like, okay, this just isn't part of the show anymore. This is now Jason exploring his own inner demons and finding that catharsis that he needs. It doesn't have to anything to do, because the first like 15 minutes of it, I'm like, okay, well, this person is really this person, but they're talking to Jason, not Peter, and Peter's doing this, and it's this game within the game, and he was this clown kid the whole time. I'm like, I was just like, no, it's not connected. It's not like, you have to take yourself away from that.
It's part of the reason I had to watch it twice. I was just like, Jesus fucking cares.
Once you realize that's not really connected, then it's much easier to go, okay, what is Jason trying to say about himself?
Right. And, by extension, you, the watcher.
Right. How do you think the participants felt after participating? I know in the Institute, we get a lot of testimonials from them. A lot of them felt that they were duped, or that they just didn't complete the game right and lost. Some felt kind of depressed afterwards, and we see that in the show as well. They couldn't get past the fact that they spent 2 years obsessing over something that ultimately didn't matter. Someone likened it to, well, it was a really good book, but the ending flopped. And then there was a lot of them. I think the majority just felt it was a fun experience, and they made some friends along the way.
Yeah, it was they're never going to experience something like that anywhere else or at any other point in time in their lives. I think a lot of people kind of learned something from it, which was live in the goddamn moment. Like, you recognize what you just finished, whether you liked it or didn't, whether it's real or not, and move on from there.
Yeah, let's focus on the book was good, but the ending flopped, because I think that's important, because the ending was stupid of the real life game. They brought everybody for a corporate team building seminar in a hotel conference room, and then, pulled the curtain down on them. I think people would have been able to accept it more if they went somewhere fun, like, or just not even fun, just not a
They would have
hotel
saved like
conference room. Like a
the
hotel
mausoleum
conference
for
room is
last.
one of the worst places to be for anything. Um,
It's like getting that, cold cup of coffee at the gas station.
yeah, it,
Well, on a 12-hour
it's just
drive.
not
It's
the
like,
place
oh,
you
the
want to
fuck
be
is
ever.
this?
And
No.
and then to go through a full day of this stuff to have the curtain fall. But like if they bring you to like a public park and are just like, the game's not real. This was all a social experiment. You guys did wonderfully. Ava's not real. Don't worry about going after her. Does anyone have any questions? Like, answer the question. Did just that last part where they explain the game and answer questions. And they're like, you're free to have the rest of your day. We got a barbecue going over here.
Yeah, I was
We
gonna
got this
say we
stuff.
got sandwiches.
And I think the show did a good job of that. Like they were trying to put on this stage show, which looked like it wouldn't have been very long. It definitely wasn't a corporate retreat. It was just, they were gonna act out what happened to Clara as we saw through these flashbacks. They were gonna react that out, and then they threw a party. Like, that's a much better ending. And I think if that was the ending in real life, people would have been more accepting of it. You wouldn't have felt like you wasted 2 years. You would have been, okay, I was duped, but I had fun, and we got to have a cool party at the end.
Yeah, and fuck, these are some good ribs.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm there for that. I agree. I think that would have been much better. It felt much more like a party. They had no money left. I bet you they probably would have, but they're like, listen, dude, I'll pay you $500.
Hotel conference rooms are fucking expensive, or more expensive than they should be. Plus, they had to hire this performance artist guy. Like, I don't know. I think there's a better way you could have done it and ended it.
Do a barbecue. Have Ron go get Tom, and butcher some shit and have a good time.
Right. And if you're in a big public space, like, it doesn't cost anything. Well, people want to stay, they can stay. If they want to go play frisbee, they can go play frisbee. Nice scuba, bro.
Sun. They don't feel trapped.
Yeah. I think they could have ended it a better way than they did, but I think a lot of participants probably felt not necessarily accomplishment, but they got something out of it. They had a fun time.
Definitely.
Dispatches from elsewhere. The main characters, most of them had a hard time moving on. And again, these are going to be spoilers. I kind of went through each one and kind of tried to analyze what they were feeling at the end. Fredwin, he wouldn't let it go and drove himself crazy over it. He still thought it was this data mining conspiracy, even though they shut everything down. They said it was nothing. He still thinks, well, they needed our information for something. Why did they recruit us? And he eventually drives himself crazy, and the other three have to go kind of save him from that.
Yeah, he damn near goes like catatonic.
Mm-hmm.
He's stuck in his little investigative state.
Right, and then you go to Sydney, who she became...
Simone.
Huh?
Simone.
I think I've been calling her Sydney this whole time.
I've said Simone every time after it. I don't think you hear me.
No, I haven't heard you.
I just mumbled it into the mic probably. Like, Simone.
All right, Simone. Sorry, I'll go back and fix it.
I didn't mean to yell. I feel like a fucking asshole.
No,
I'm sorry.
That's good. I'm the asshole because I've been calling her the wrong name this whole time. Simone, who she kind of became at peace with herself to an extent, but she missed the excitement of the game. It gave her a sense of purpose. It gave her something to do. It gave her people that accepted her for who she was, because she was still struggling with finding that in her real life. She had, as far as I could tell, she had just recently transitioned.
It seemed very recent, or it seemed like everything was there except for the physical embodiment till recently.
Right.
Like it seemed like the physical change was pretty recent.
Right. Yes.
But the every other aspect was natural because she hangs out with her grandma or something, and that seemed very natural, and she seemed very comfortable with it. But it was almost like she missed everybody else. Like she found something with herself. Like she achieved some sort of thing, but without everybody else, it just wasn't as good.
Well, yeah, and she found that these three people accepted her for who she was, no questions asked, because that's in and I can't speak for transgender people. I'm not a transgender person, but I would assume, and if you are a transgender person and want to correct me, please feel free to do so. I would assume that every time you meet a new person, you have constant anxiety over what they're thinking of you. Will they accept you? Do they know you're transgender? Do they care that you're transgender? And you have a million thoughts flying through your head. And none of that happened with these three people. They were just
running the
boom
scenario.
into the game and ready to hit the ground running. They didn't even bother to think what was going on with her, which is the point of acceptance that people want. Is you don't have to point out how I'm different. I'm not different. I'm one of you. We're all in this together. So she found that, and then she realized she could have that, and she was okay at that point with her own personal life. But the game brought the excitement to her life. There was nothing that excited her in her life like the game did.
She was very similar to Peter in that regard.
Right. Peter, again, just could not get past the game. And this was more because of what he lost in he wasn't able to spend time with his new friends anymore. He wanted the game to be real and to keep going, so he had an excuse to keep spending time with these people.
Yeah, to continue to be spontaneous and, experience.
Right, because that wasn't his lifestyle.
Yeah, he couldn't force himself out of his comfort zone. He needed the cattle prod.
Exactly. And then you have Janice, who she was the one who adjusted best after the game was over. She actually kind of got back to her original self. She wanted to be more outgoing. She started taking college courses. She started becoming more productive. Her husband died within the span of the game at some point, and she became who she wanted to be again. And the game helped her get there. And that's kind of why I like the show, is because it showed positive outcomes and negative outcomes of how this game affected people. It wasn't just like, well, everybody was shit afterwards.
Yeah, and then it was over.
Yeah. All right, so here's the important question. Would you participate in a game like this? I think I probably already know the answer.
100%. Like 150%. I would pay to be in a game like this.
Would you make it all the way to the end if it lasted 3 years?
Hell no. My daughter would be she'd be 4.5. If, like, say I went and started this game tomorrow. And if I was...
Well, I don't think the people who were in the game were active for 3 years.
Right. I mean, if I could devote...
I think a lot of people dropped off for a while, and then the ending was coming, and they all of a sudden got renewed interest in it because they got this message that the ending was coming.
That'd probably be something I would do, honestly, because it's... I don't know. If I didn't have, like, a wife and a daughter, I would be probably really into it. Like, I'd probably follow every step of the way.
Right.
But, alas.
I would go one of two ways. I would definitely be into it no matter what. I would show up first day ready to go. But there's also a really good chance that I would give up after the first day. I'd just be like, fuck it. I would be like super into it. I'd be going first day. All right, let's follow these clues. Let's find them. All right. And then when I got to the end of the first day and I'm like, wait, all right, it's fucking 9:00. We got another clue. Who knows how long it's going to take us to find this? Let's just get back at it next weekend. There's a really good chance I wouldn't show back up next weekend.
Right. It's like they didn't even feed me.
Yeah.
It's fucking bullshit.
If I somehow made it past that hump, I made it through the first day, I went back a second weekend, third weekend, all right, I'm into it, I would definitely get obsessive over it. Not quite Fredwin obsessive, but maybe like Peter obsessive. Where I would eschew a lot of things in my normal life to focus on what's going on in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't quit my job or anything, but if I didn't have anything else
I would
going
not
on,
be trying very hard at my job for quite some time.
Yeah, if I could avoid.
Yeah, I'd be getting the bare minimum done at work while letting my mind wander into what's going on with the game.
Letting my mind wander to elsewhere.
Ooh, nice.
Dang.
It's tagline for this episode.
Love it.
We don't really do like taglines for episodes, so.
Because we're not losers.
Well, okay. So, all right, you said you would participate. If it was this game specifically, which flyer ad would get you to pull the tab and call the number?
Shit. Honestly, the Talking to Dolphins one was super interesting.
I would think that's too fake. I don't think that would ever get me. I'd just be like, nah, this is just somebody fucking with me.
But for real though, dolphins are super smart.
I know they are, but like I don't think it would be real.
They have their own way of communicating. Like they have a language, man.
Oh,
so it's something where they'd be my sea buddies. Be like, hey.
I mean, that would be a cool thing if it were real, but I would have a hard time believing that flyer's real.
I would teach them the English language, and I'd say, get me that treasure. Go get me some of this treasure, and I will give you all the fish you could ever want.
So long and thanks for all the fish.
So long, goodbye.
I think for me it would be the memories to media flyer. I just think that would be a really cool thing to experience, to actually relive your memories, to see what you did in the past. And I think it would also solve a ton of arguments between me and my wife, because like we're constantly like, she thinks she said something and she didn't say that thing, and I think she didn't say that thing but she did, and it's like, okay, we have no idea. We're just waiting for our 5-year-old to get a little bit more coherent of what we're saying, and then she can settle the arguments for us. But
Right.
I mean, memories to media would do that for us. Would be like, nope, just plug the thing into your ear. Here we go. Nope, you didn't say it.
I would really enjoy that, but I would get lost in it.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I've lost some people in my life. I'd probably be like, I really would like to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, I don't know how many memories I would actually want to relive, but there definitely be some ways to get lost.
Is it optional? Like, what memory can you?
Yeah, can I pick and choose? Can I go like, all right, I want to go to this day in 2004 and see what I was doing.
I want to go to this day where I had 12 tackles and 3 sacks and I was fucking killing it. That'd be cool.
And could you see, like, are you just reliving what you're doing? Is it like a first person memory, or is it like this omniscient memory where, like, all right, let's say we're reliving that memory of a football game. Is it like Madden where you can see everything that's going on? You can see who's in the stands. Maybe there was a girl looking at you that you didn't know was looking at you. Things like that.
Well, I think it'd be, omniscient, but more like a lucid dream.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd be sweet.
Now, let's talk about Jason Segel and what he got out of making Dispatches from Elsewhere, what it meant to him, what he was looking to get at, because this is what the final episode of Dispatches from Elsewhere is all about. It, like we said, it's not actually connected to the first 9 episodes. Like, if you get to the end of episode 9, that's the end of the show. But episode 10 is just a level for Jason Segel to explore himself and explore what he needed to get out of it. What did you feel he got out of it? Or, like, how did you feel about that episode?
Like I said, I watched it twice. The first time I thought it was narcissistic as fuck.
That's what my wife came away thinking of it, but she also didn't watch the whole show leading up to it. And she didn't watch most of that episode either.
Well, here's the key thing is I went in and out, and I know I missed, bits and pieces of it because I was busy that day. And then I sat down and rewatched it again later at night, after my daughter went to sleep and I had some quiet and I could focus on it. Then I thought it was really, really well done. And what I think he found from it is some direction.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was just that thing we've talked about already. It's just there's wonder out there. Go find it. Quit falling into that routine and just doing what you have to do to get by and wallowing in that self-pity. Fucking just do it.
Yeah, there's definitely that. He seemed to have lost his creative mojo, and he had definitely become an alcoholic. It seemed like writing movies about dick jokes only gets you so far, and that wasn't creatively fulfilling for him anymore.
Yeah, and taking jobs just for the money. Right.
And as part of his recovery from his alcoholism that he sunk into, and it wasn't like raging alcoholic, it was just he had nothing else going on in his life, so he drank a lot. And as part of that recovery, he was tasked with writing something personal. And for him, this was a form of catharsis, right? He just put himself in this situation. He was able to explore himself and how he would react to situations if he were presented with a game like this. How would he go through it? What does he want out of it? And that, like you said, finding the sense of wonder. I think he also came to the conclusion through this that everyone has shit going on in their lives, and although each person's shit is different, it's actually all the same. Is kind of what he came through it. Do you agree with that? To an extent, I'll extrapolate on it a little bit, but with just that statement, everybody's shit's different, but it's all the same.
Oh, I mean, yeah, dude. We all got things going on, and we all got feelings, and I think if you can accept that fact, you can accept people as a whole. Because if you don't, otherwise they're just kind of shitty. They're closed off and stuff like that.
Well, and that's what happened to him. is
he became
he
isolated.
thought he had this unique problem, loss of creativity. He doesn't know what to do with his life, with his career moving forward. He thinks this is a unique problem, special to him because of who he is, how early in his life he started his career, and how successful he was early in his life. And he doesn't think that he has anyone to reach out to. But kind of, I think what he discovered through writing this and through making this show is that even though your shit is unique and personal to you, you don't think anyone will understand, you can actually lean on your friends and your community to help you through your shit, because they might have not gone through this exact thing, but they've gone through some other shit that's unique and personal to them.
Exactly.
And so he wanted to explore how this sense of community can always help you get through whatever shit is going on in your life, and that reaching out is better than isolating and bottling up those feelings. It's okay, yeah, they might not understand exactly this exact personal unique problem, but that doesn't mean that they won't understand me. And I think that's what he was going through when he slipped into this depression and alcoholism, is he thought he was alone. And through his recovery, I think he realized that he wasn't.
Well, I mean, he really wanted to be someone other than the show me your dick guy.
Right.
You know, the full frontal, dumb, goofy idiot, because he's obviously much more than that.
He's very talented at a lot of things.
And he's an intelligent person. I mean, you can see it when he's just talking.
Plus, he's Vanilla Thunder, man. He can dunk.
He's huge. That dude is huge.
Like you said, he didn't want to be that guy anymore. He wanted to do something different, but he didn't know how to get to it. And you see that in each character in Dispatches from Elsewhere, is they think each of their things is unique. You know, Peter thinks he's just stuck in a rut and has this monotonous life that no one else will understand, especially when he meets these three other people who seem to have much more fulfilling lives.
Seem messy.
Simone is, you know, transgender and going through physically transitioning. She doesn't have anyone she can talk to. And she doesn't know who she can confide in. Janice, same thing. Her husband's dying. She's made her whole identity about her husband for the past 40 years or whatever. And she doesn't know what to do about that anymore. Her kids won't talk to her about it really. And she's just stuck, and she needs to find herself, but again, has no one to confide in except her husband, who can't communicate. And then Fredwin is a super genius who can't deal with anything without thinking it's this huge thing. And they all find through their journey through this that they can each help each other, even though they don't know specifically what's going on. And so I think he did a really good job of portraying that and showing that you can work through your shit even though somebody might not know exactly what you're going through, but just a sense of community helps you get through it anyways.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. That's all. That's all, folks.
I'm a genius.
You got anything else?
I don't think so.
If anyone knows of any alternate reality games that we can get involved in, please let us know. Hit us on Twitter at APA something @alone_podcast.
Please do. That'll be a lot of fun.
If you've seen Dispatches from Elsewhere and disagree with any of the points that we've made, or were either a part of the Jejune Institute game in some form or fashion, or watch the Institute and know more about it than we do, please let us know. We're here for comments. Like we said, we watched this documentary, we watched this show, we read a few articles on the internet that are there. There's not many, and we did the best we could, but I'm sure there's more information out there, and we would love to hear it, because this is still super interesting, and it's always kind of like in the back of my mind ever since I watched the show and the documentary of like, damn, what were people doing like that? They just went and wasted all these weekends playing this game.
Yeah,
or spent all of these weekends, I should say, not wasted.
Well, devoted all this time, money, and effort.
So if you know more about it, please let us know. If you want to discuss the merits of Dispatches from Elsewhere or what Jason Segel was feeling, let us know. We're here for it. Thanks for listening. All the music for Podcasts About Something is provided by those cats.
Yeah, stay sassy.
Stay classic.